The Red Sox commemorate the 10-year anniversary of the Boston bombing and win 3 games in a row.
You are Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I want to welcome you back into the Locked On Red Sox podcast, and thank you so much for making Locked On Red Sox your first listen of every single day. I'm your host, Ignaszewski. We have a lot to get to today, and luckily, it's a lot of positive stuff as well. You know, over the last week or so with the Red Sox sort of in a little bit of a slump, it was tough to stay positive. You know, a little bit of negativity here or there in last week's episodes, but luckily over the weekend, maybe it was the yellow jerseys. Maybe it was remembering the 10-year anniversary of the Boston Marathon bombing. But the Red Sox won 3 games in a row against the Los Angeles Angels and Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani. But they were able to also commemorate not only the marathon bombing, but also multiple of the 2013 former players. It was nice to see, John Lester back in a Red Sox uniform. A little bit weird to see Jacoby Ellsbury back in a Red Sox uniform. I know he came back for, the Dustin Pedroia ceremony and everything like that. Still weird to see him in a Red Sox uniform after, signed with the Yankees, took the money instead of staying back in Boston. I was a big Ellsbury fan growing up, so I took that very, very personally, but it was nice to sort of see, the nostalgic energy back in Fenway of, not only looking back at the horrific marathon bombing, but, remembering how resilient the 2013 team was able to be to ultimately bring a championship back to Boston during that tough year. And, if you're watching the video version, to my right, I got a picture of, the Boston, the Be Strong, the Johnny Gomes Sports Illustrated magazine, all the Sports Illustrated magazines from that year. That was one of the best seasons of my time being a Red Sox fan, just being able to not only have the energy of the, get beard, but also how clutch that team was when the moments mattered most, and the energy that they came with each and every single night, not only during, the playoff run, but throughout that season. It was just so much fun to watch that team. And it was cool to, see the Red Sox really, honor them throughout, this weekend and during that specific game on Sunday. But before we get more into some of the winning ways that we saw the Red Sox have over the last 3 games or so, I wanted to sort of update our listeners about everything that's been going on, on the injury front, and then also some other roster moves as well. There's been a lot of updates over the last few days or so. So I wanted to start off with Chris Martin going to the injured list with shoulder inflammation, Jake Faria being called up, and then Wyatt Mills going to the 60-day IL. So Cora essentially said that Chris Martin's inflammation in his shoulder, there was no structural damage. And he said he's hopeful that he'll be back at the end of the 15-day window. He said no red flags as far as structure. In terms of Wyatt Mills, we hadn't really heard a lot of, him throwing, getting ramped up or even any indication that, he would have a rehab assignment anytime soon. So it wasn't super surprising that he went on the 60-day IL, but was unfortunate to sort of see that specific move, especially with how effective he was throughout spring training. And he was sort of, added to this Red Sox roster during the offseason as sort of a relief depth piece and somebody I know a lot of fans were really excited about. So, we're going to have to wait, 2 more months to be able to see him in regular season action. But in terms of Faria, he's a guy who struggled a little bit over his last 2 outings for the WooSox. I was at the game that he pitched last in where, he essentially came in for Brian Motto, who ended up, loading the bases on 3 hit batters, in a row. And then Faria, right when he came in, allowed a grand slam. And so, April 8th, He, pitched 2 innings, allowed 2 hits, 3 earned runs, walked 3 batters, and struck out nobody. And then on the 12th, which is the game that I'm referring to, he went 2 innings, allowed 2 hits, allowed 3 earned runs, walked 1 batter, struck out 3, and allowed 2 home runs. So I was a little bit surprised that was Faria, to be quite honest with you, especially with how he struggled thus far with the WooSox. Also, Heim Bloom was at the game where he struggled as well. So a little bit surprised that this was the specific move. Now, one thing to, keep in mind, Brian Bello is going to be being called up on Marathon Monday, which this is going to be when this is going to be dropping. So I wouldn't be surprised if, maybe by the time you're listening to this, Faria could be DFA'd in terms of a move. So Brian Bello would be able to be taken off of the 15-day IL. But, honestly, Ryan Sheriff was the one guy who was in my mind, immediately to be called up after the Martin injury was announced. Sheriff has been really effective with Worcester throughout this season so far. Struggled a little bit on Sunday, but, especially with him not only being a lefty, obviously that's a need for the Red Sox bullpen at the moment. And, Sheriff also didn't allow any runs throughout spring training. And, prior to the game where he struggled in Sunday, had a 1.93 ERA. And was somebody who's really impressed me thus far in a Red Sox uniform, not only, as I mentioned, in spring training, but also in Worcester so far. So, very curious to see how everything unfolds when Bello does ultimately get taken off the IL. But, that's at least, the updates regarding, the Martin and the Mills sort of moves. But the Red Sox claimed Brendan Bardino. I tried to say that 3 separate times, just wasn't able to get it. You know how I struggle with these pronunciations, but he's a reliever from the Seattle Mariners. They claimed him off of waivers. He was ultimately optioned to AAA Worcester. And with that move, Zach Kelly was transferred to the 60-day IL. It was updated that from the x-rays and what doctors have seen thus far from Zach Kelly's arm, it's not immediate indication that it's Tommy John surgery. Still, has been announced that it's right elbow inflammation, and so that's what it is right now. And he's going to continue to have tests and meet with specialists. But this indicates that we're probably not going to see Zach Kelly, not probably, definitely, for 2 months, but at least for Darnito. Maybe if I say it a few more times, I'll get it down. But, hopefully we say his name more and more often down the line, because, he was really effective last year, has struggled a little bit thus far this season. That's probably what prompted the Mariners to ultimately, put him on waivers. But he ended up allowing 11 runs thus far, 8 of them earned over 6 innings while striking out 11 batters. And interestingly enough, over those 6 innings, that is 1 more run than he allowed all of his 32.2 innings pitched last season. He allowed 10 runs last year in AAA, amassing a 2.20 ERA, as I mentioned, over 32.2 innings. So not only is he a lefty, but he was also very effective last season. So maybe the Red Sox can find a way to see what made him so successful last year, maybe have him tweak a few things, and then, maybe he's able to channel, the dominance that he showed last season. And he's able to be added as, not only another viable lefty option depth piece down in Worcester, but, not only are we going to see him in Worcester because, he was just optioned down there, but, maybe he can make an impact, if there's an injury on the Red Sox roster, or, if he does so well that the Red Sox, want to see what he's able to do in the major leagues, that could potentially happen. But that was another move that ended up happening on Sunday. So very curious to see. We're seeing all these different shufflings in the bullpen, how everything will ultimately play out, not only when Bello gets taken off the 15-day IL, but also Paxton as well. Obviously Paxton ended up making his second rehab appearance in Worcester this past week. It is indicated that he will go another time. Cora said that it's not a definite that after this next start that he will be called up. He wants him to work on a few more things. They want to continue to stretch him out. But, that is essentially the next domino to essentially fall outside of, obviously Bello being taken off the IL. But Then the big question is who's not only going to be taken out of the Red Sox rotation, who will potentially, be optioned down or DFA'd in terms of the Sox ultimately making that move for Paxton. But, that's all going to be answered in the next few weeks or so. But these were the specific roster updates going into Monday. But I want to speak more on some of the success that we saw from the Red Sox in these three Angels games in our second segment. Before we do that, we've not only seen, multiple moves that Heimblum has made throughout this season, but also during the offseason. And if you think that you can do better and you want to be a GM, Ultimate Pro GM is the game for you. It's honestly one of the coolest games that I've played in a long time. And it literally allows you to put your GM hat on and feel like you are managing a major league roster. You not only control the hiring, the right coaches and staff, you also manage the team's finances. Then you also do scouting and drafting players as well. And one of the most difficult things in my mind is managing the personalities and injuries. We all know how there can be a clubhouse cancer. There can be somebody who can be a leader in the clubhouse and how much chemistry really matters. And then obviously we're not only seeing this with the Red Sox thus far, but how much injuries can really stack up and hinder your team from getting wins. And then also in this game, you navigate your franchise through free agency and all the ups and downs of the season. And it's honestly been so much fun, like I said, for me to play. It's been awesome to be able to play against the different Locked On hosts. Sort of like Lauren, I'm not that great at it. I try my best. I try to channel my inner Heim Bloom or Theo Epstein, whichever one you like. For me, I try to do both. But with this game, it's not only challenging, but it's also fun as well. And you're able to play it online, on the go, as much as you want, wherever you go. So Locked On Red Sox listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo code Locked On in the game store. So make sure to check it out. To download the game, just visit probaseballgm.com. Scan the code if you're watching on YouTube, or look it up on the App Store. Ultimate Pro Baseball GM. Start your dynasty today. So we've seen the Red Sox luckily get back into the win column over the last few days or so against the Angels. I wanted to start off with Sunday's game, where we saw Garrett Whitlock make his second start of the season after struggling in his season debut. It was really nice to see him not only have better control, but also throw a career high 7 innings. He was the first pitcher on the Red Sox roster to pitch 7 innings, or over 6 innings, in one start so far this season. That's honestly been one of the biggest issues for the team this season, is that they've not had pitchers in the rotation be able to go the length. They've only had starters go, 4 to 5 innings or so, and that's forced relievers to go and pitch more than they expect. And, right now it shows in the stats that the Red Sox have thrown 64 innings so far out of the bullpen, which is the most of all in baseball, just in front of the Oakland Athletics. That was prior to Sunday's game, where, obviously Whitlock definitely helped that number be a little bit less or so, but it was actually the fastest Red Sox game since April 22nd of 1999. This game was an hour and 57 seconds, so it definitely shows how that pitch clock helped, but it also showed how not only Whitlock on the mound was very effective, but also Reed Detmers for the Angels, how effective he was for them. But specifically with Whitlock, as I mentioned, pitched 7 innings, only allowed 3 hits, 1 earned run, walked 2 batters, and struck out 5. And we saw his stuff be very effective throughout the beginning of the game. Struggled a little bit, I saw, in the 6th inning, seemed to have a little bit of command issues, but that's sort of what you expect when a guy goes a little bit later into games than he's used to, especially in his second start of the season. But it was also nice to see, Caleb Ork come in, only allowing 1 hit over 1 inning, and then Ryan Brazier ended up getting the save as well. And Lauren and I have crapped on Brazier a good amount on this podcast, and I got to give him his flowers. I like to give people credit where credit is due. Brazier has looked really good so far over these last few games or so, not only in this one, being able to get Shohei Ohtani as well as Mike Trout out, obviously two of the most dominant and lethal hitters in the league right now. But it's definitely nice when you are able to have some of these guys like Ort or Brazier who coming into the season had a lot of question marks, and not a lot of fans had any confidence in both of those guys, but especially when they're able to come up big and be a lot more reliable than you expect, that's only going to help the bullpen. That's only going to lead to more wins for the Red Sox, and it definitely did that on Sunday, which is able to help them extend their winning streak to 3 games so far. And we also saw Justin Turner help the Red Sox score two of their only runs off of a 2-run home run in the 3rd inning. And, especially with Adam Duvall's recent injury, Lauren and I talked about it plenty last week, how bad the offense has been performing and how it's really hurt the Red Sox in being able to stay in some of these games and ultimately led to a lot of losses throughout last week. But Justin Turner's been the one guy who has really stepped up after struggling at the beginning of this season at the plate. We've seen over the last 7 games, Turner's hit 346. He's been 9-4-26. And then he also hit a home run, as I mentioned in Sunday's game, and has scored 4 RBIs and walked 3 times as well. And that's one thing that Lauren and I said plenty last week. The Red Sox just need one hitter to spark. They need one guy in this lineup to really come up big, and that was ultimately Turner in Sunday's game. And then we saw in Saturday's game where the Red Sox won 9-7, Yu Chang came up huge at the plate. We saw him in the 4th hit a go-ahead 2-run home run. Then in the 8th, Chang ended up hitting a 2-run single, and he ultimately went 2 for 4 with 4 RBIs in that game. But honestly, something that really frustrated me with Chang in this game on Saturday, where he was so clutch at the plate, but he ended up, making a misplay when tagging out Shohei Ohtani, who ended up, sliding in for a double and ended up hitting an RBI double that gave the Angels the lead. And I was just so frustrated because Chang had the ball in his glove, but just tagged Ohtani a little bit later than he should have, in my mind. And obviously, Ohtani was able to slide into second base safely. But that was one thing that we've seen, over and over, at least with Chang defensively, is just some of these mental errors, not only on the tag that I'm referring to with Ohtani on Saturday, but, we've also seen it with some of these different bunt plays has really hurt the Red Sox, not only with Blyer, but we also saw it with Sale as well. And, just defensively, he's supposed to be a wizard out there. So that's one thing that, it's been tough to see thus far with Chang defensively has had a little bit of mental errors, but, luckily it didn't hurt the Red Sox in terms of getting a W on Saturday. And, he made up for it in terms of, getting those 2 very clutch hits. And then we also saw Rafael Devers hit his 7th home run of the season, which going into Sunday, he was tied for the lead in the majors with 7 home runs. And actually, interestingly enough, Devers and Ortiz had the same exact amount of home runs of 146 in 2,751 up at bats. So you couldn't even get anywhere closer to having these 2 players, pretty much interlock in these comparisons that most people have been saying about them too. Obviously, anytime people bring up, Rafael Devers and David Ortiz's names, first thing that people think is, Devers is the next Ortiz. And, even Ortiz, indicated that in, a recent interview with Jarek Robis saying, if anybody on this current roster is, just like how I was, coming up and, is super clutch at the plate, that's Rafael Devers. And so, it definitely shows in the numbers, not a coincidence whatsoever how Rafael Devers is essentially the next David Ortiz. But, it was nice to see Devers continuing to, show off his power stroke at the plate. Then we also saw Rob Refsnyder continue to have success at the plate as well, went 2 for 3 in Saturday's game. 2 RBIs, also walked twice. And even though Pivetta struggled a little bit in this game, ended up allowing a grand slam to begin the game and also ultimately allowed 6 earned runs over this start. Ended up looking a little bit better after that first inning, but this is definitely something that I talked about a little bit earlier with the Sox having to put in a lot of relievers to help them get out of the game, essentially because starters aren't able to go the distance. Pavetta's one guy who the Sox kind of relied on being able to eat up those innings. He only went 4 in Saturday's game, and the Sox had to have 5 different relievers come in order to finish Saturday's game. And then, just to finish it off in terms of, what the Red Sox have done over the last 3 games, which have ultimately been wins. They won on Friday 5-3 in game 1 of the Angels game. We saw Tanner Houck go 4 innings, allowing 4 hits, 2 earned runs, walked 4 batters, and struck out 6. And then we also saw Winkowski go 3 innings, allowing 4 hits, and didn't strike out anybody, but did walk 1 in, and ultimately also ended up getting the win in a relief appearance. But definitely nice to see the Sox get back in the win columns and get on a little bit of a winning streak. I think it was a little bit of help of the yellow jerseys, but we're going to end this episode with a mental health minute going into our third and final segment. But before we do that, I want to talk to you about So Rare. So this is our new sponsor, and it's a revolutionary fantasy baseball game and marketplace, transforming fans into owners with officially licensed digital cards featuring players from all across 30 MLB teams. It's unlike any other fantasy baseball platform. So Rare managers truly own their fantasy experience by collecting, buying, selling, and competing with other player cards against global opponents to win epic rewards. Win or loss, you still own your cards, and there's no cost to play. Plus, the more you win, the more you advance. So collecting increasingly powerful cards and accessing next level competitions and rewards. And something else that's really cool as well is that they recently partnered with MLB All-Stars Juan Soto and Julio Rodriguez to serve as brand ambassadors, and they both are featured in So Rare's current brand campaign, and they'll be engaging with So Rare community throughout the season at different MLB events. That's definitely something that is super cool. So if you want to check out So Rare, head over to sorare.com/lockedon. That's spelled SORARE.com to draft your team of free player cards, set your lineups, and start competing today to win epic rewards again, that's sorare.com/lockedon to start playing today. Now, going into our third and final segment, we haven't really done the mental health minute over these last few episodes, mainly because we've had so much to talk about regarding the Red Sox, but I wanted to sort of bring it back, especially to begin the new week. One thing, especially with it being nice outside and everything like that, that I wanted to remind people is get outside, especially when I know for myself, I work remote for part of some of the jobs that I do, and it's tough for me to really get outside, enjoy myself, and also enjoy the fresh air and sort of give myself a break throughout the day. And that's one thing that, was speaking with a lot of my friends, especially who, work in a general, office and stuff, they get so just focused, being at their computer and are it's tough for them to essentially find time to go outside. But whether it's during your lunch break or right when you get out, that's something that I would recommend that you do, because especially after you working 8 hours of work, or with everything that you have to do during your busy schedule, getting outside and breathing in the fresh air is not only the best way to reduce your stress levels, your anxiety levels, but also just to be able to give yourself a mental break and to really remind yourself that nothing matters. One thing that, especially when I'm outside, I look up at the clouds, the blue sky, I remind myself that we're just on a spinning rock in Earth, or excuse me, in space. And nothing really matters at all. And so everything that we're stressing about, everything that we're, so uptight about, I got to get this done, and everything, just take a deep breath, just relax, just be outside, just be in the moment, and just enjoy the fresh air. Because especially if you're from New England, if you're in a place where there's winter, it's been tough to enjoy the outside if you're not a cold weather type of person. I'm not really. I love to ski, and when I get outside, I get to ski. I love the winter, but at the same time, I'm super happy that the nice weather is back, and I hope you are too, and I hope that you're able to go out and enjoy it. So, if you're listening to this, whether you're, in the gym or, in your car or whatever, try to find some time to go outside and really enjoy it and give yourself a little bit of a break. But that is it for our mental health minute for this episode. But as always, I greatly appreciate everybody tuning into the Locked On Red Sox podcast and for making Locked On Red Sox your first listen of every single day. Now make sure to check into tomorrow's episode because we have a very special guest in Gone Bridge co-host Andrew Gardner. Him and I are going to be breaking down Marathon Monday, where we're going to be seeing Brian Bello's season debut, hopefully, which I'm super excited about. So him and I are going to be, recapping that game in our next episode. And if you want to get updated or notifications about each and every single episode that we post on Locked On Red Sox 5 days a week, make sure to subscribe on whatever audio platform that you're currently listening to or over on YouTube. And also follow Locked On Red Sox over on Twitter. It's LO_Red Sox. We've been posting these Locked On Nows, not only on YouTube, but also over on our Twitter as well. It's sort of like a little recap or a quick hit after each and every single Red Sox game. So if you want to see more of those, make sure to follow us over on Twitter. As I said, it's LO_Red Sox. Also follow myself. It's at Jake Iggy. And also follow my co-host Lauren. It's three laws, Lauren with 4 R's, and a little bit of an update. You're going to be seeing more of my face throughout the next 2 weeks or so. Lauren is going to be going on a little bit of a trip. And so I have tons of great guests planned for not only this week, but also next week as well. So get super excited over these next few weeks, not only to, get more of me, but also some other fun guests from throughout the Red Sox community. But as always, we greatly appreciate everybody tuning into the Locked On Red Sox podcast. I hope that you have a great rest of your day. We'll end it how we always end it. Keep the faith. And I'm going to keep this in just for the sake of staying positive. Stay positive. And as we always end it, let's go Sox. Peace.